There we go. All right. Wait for folks to start coming in. I see 75 already, which is, oh my gosh, good morning, good afternoon. All right, let's see. As you're coming in, certainly introduce yourself in the chat. We're gonna spend some time doing introductions in just a bit, but as we're waiting for more folks to join us, go ahead and drop where you're tuning in from. I know I'm saying good morning. I'm in Central Time Zone. You may not be. We'd love to see where you're actually tuning in from this morning, afternoon, evening, maybe for some people. All right, there we go. Costa Rica. Wow. Oh my gosh. Quebec, Chicago, Philadelphia. Oh my gosh. Then it gets really, really hard to keep up with. Love it. Cool. We're just surpassing about 130 or so participants. I'm really excited for our conversation this morning. We were talking right before this and trying to decide like how deep are we going to go in our time together. So really looking forward to the conversation today. One question I actually did want to ask everyone, for us here in Omaha, we just had like this weird heat wave. Like it did not start feeling like fall until literally 2 days ago. I don't know, Lauren, Chuck, does it feel like fall where you are?
Oh, we've had several days of pouring rain in Massachusetts
Okay.
and kind of
Okay.
chilly air, so that it was a very dark and gloomy kind of weekend.
Okay. Got it. We've
I
had like
um I
90.
haven't been I just got home from being out for quite a bit, and then all of a sudden in Indianapolis it turned fall, and we live near the woods, so it's basically leaf-ageddon right now in our backyard with leaves everywhere.
Wow. I
And
know.
we've been slow on the leaves. The leaves are just starting to
Yeah, I was
change
like looking out
here.
the
I feel like they're
window.
usually much more on the way off the trees now.
All right. Well, I see more folks coming into the chat. Certainly continue to introduce yourselves, but to make the most of our time together today, I'm going to go ahead and get started. As a reminder, this community is full of incredible people. There's lots of great connections that can be made here. So as you're doing those introductions, I would encourage you to like drop your LinkedIn, some things that you're working on, and certainly as the questions start to come up for our speakers today, feel free to answer amongst one another and just continuously be in community together. So here we are. We're here to talk about how internal comms can be a strategic partner. This conversation, I'm so excited for it. But before we jump in, I actually want to take a moment to introduce who you all are going to be hearing from today. So first we have Lauren Bellin, internal comms writer and project manager at Tufts University. Lauren is bringing a wealth of experience in shaping communication strategies inside of complex organizations, and she'll be sharing a lot of her lessons learned along the way and even things like she's working on right now. And then we're also joined by Chuck Gose, founder of Ecology. Many of you probably already know Chuck from the amazing work he's done in the comms community. And he's been such a champion for internal communicators everywhere and really just continues to spark important conversations about the role that we play within organizations. And then there's me. I'm Devin. I'm the communications manager here at Workshop. I'm going to be moderating the conversation today, so not speaking as much as these two, but I really could not be more excited to dig into these topics today. And so much for you all joining live as well. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get into the conversation. We did get a ton of questions submitted before this conversation starts today, but I also want to remind you that you can submit questions live, and you can actually do that in the Q&A section. It should be on the bottom part of your Zoom webinar. And that way, if you're able to submit there, I can keep track of the conversation. I can check things off once we've answered them. And then that way they will also display for folks too. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen now. We don't need this. I will say this is being recorded and we will distribute this recording as always after things are done. But let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen. We don't need these slides. We want to see folks' face. All right. So big question. Let's get started with the first one. This first question actually kind of came in a bunch of questions, but let's start here. And it says, in your experience, what helps strategic comms partners define clear priorities and protect focus when multiple leaders see communications as a shared service?
I'll let you go first, Lauren.
Fair. First of all, I think some of it is in the ongoing positioning. We work really hard actually not to call ourselves a service, and we talk about business partners instead of clients in terms of our internal language. And so I think part of it is conceptualizing yourself as a partner and not as a service provider. At the same time, of course, we do provide functionally services for leaders and various partners across the institution. And so I think it's also about getting really clear within your team and your organization about what your driving priorities are and how things align with them, and thinking about what your role is in any given partnership, leader relationship, team relationship. We're a small but mighty team of 3 internal communicators at Tufts, but we are partnered with people who are doing internal communications in, 8 or 9 schools, in multiple central administration departments, multiple leaders at the provost, president, and other levels. And so a lot of it really comes down to understanding, am I actually executing on this? Am I advising, mentoring on this? Am I leading this? Really getting very clear about all of that, and where it's not sustainable, identifying it and having those conversations with folks who have the ability to influence resources, et cetera. But it's getting really clear.
Yeah, I think it's, if anything, view it as a good problem to have. If leaders are coming to you seeking advice, helping work, get the work done. I think that's a, I guess, both a blessing and a curse, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity that, as you mentioned, Lauren, to be very clear, but often I think this is sort of that maybe a chameleon role that communicators can play, is we can multifunction. We can do a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And again, also the blessing and a curse, because they might have wanted to use us one way and they just always think, oh, this is what Lauren does. Another leader saw you do something, let's say, oh, this is what Lauren does over here. And so I think it's always reminding leaders in the companies of the variety of things that we can do to support the business in a comms role, and ultimately then continue to level up. I heard this, I shouldn't say heard, read this post yesterday on LinkedIn. I think it's from a gentleman named Simon Crockett. I don't know Simon. I just saw it because someone else interacted with it. And he kept coming up with a phrase like, what more can we do?
Mm.
Not what are we doing, but what more can we do? And that's now something I'm going to add to my soundtracks, because I think especially in comms, there's always a little bit more we can do. And this isn't becoming the yes person versus the no person. It's truly like, how can we continue to add value? How can we do more to positively impact the business?
And I'm just going to riff off of that for a second, because I think for me, it's less about what more can we do and what better can we do, because
Hmm.
so much of what we do can be iterated and improved and dramatically increase results from some small tweaks. And you're right, it is a good problem to have. I think it's also on the clarity side of things. For me, you just reminded me that it's also important to understand like where you're at in your relationship development with those leaders. Our team is 3.5 years old. When we were getting started, we were very focused on saying yes to a lot of things. And we probably said yes to things 3.5 years ago that we wouldn't necessarily, like we might say, yes, and here's how now. And part of that is, are you establishing the relationships and the trust? Do you have it already? And what are you working kind of within in those boundaries?
Yeah, the you bring up an interesting point about the kind of the yes no thing. I think where you are in your personal development, because I think as you
Yeah,
become more senior,
good point.
you probably become more confident in being able to say yes and here's how you do it, or no, but here's where you can go. Because I think that's part of the narrative that I think I don't necessarily really like, that I see a lot on LinkedIn, where people are like, you need to say no more, you need to say no
But
more. And I hear that. I understand that. And especially when it comes to boundary setting, but also there's a lot of opportunity to say yes to things, especially earlier on in your career, to build
yes.
those relationships, to showcase, to learn, have new experiences, pick up new skills. And I think a lot of us have been guilty to saying yes to a lot of things, where it almost becomes a bit of this junk drawer mentality, where you just start collecting all these different activities out there. But I think it is that the confidence in knowing your role and how you're supporting the business and leading the business out there, that helps you be able to say the yes and no. And Devin, I'm going to push back on you, on something that you shared earlier. I actually do think you should chime in on some of these
Oh,
things
I
because you
agree.
are also in the day-to-day role of
right. That
internal
must be.
comms, and you have unique experiences
Yep.
out there as well.
Yep, absolutely. I know this is my first time actually moderating and not sort of being on this side. I was really enjoying listening because I'm not taking notes, but I'm like taking notes. One of the things that you all said that I would like to sort of continue the conversation with is we hear a lot about ROI and measuring impact. So for those things that you all just said about saying yes more and thinking about the things that we can do better, right? So if we're doing more, doing better, how do we start to package that up to then tell leadership or our constituents, here's what we're doing, here's what's working, and here's why it matters?
So I love something, Chuck, that you and Jenny have both said on your podcast, which is that it's a conversation, not a dashboard. And I think that that's like foundational to any conversation about demonstrating value, is that it's not about vanity metrics. It's not about just dumping a report on leaders without context. And it often is about doing some education that internal comms metrics are not the same as marketing metrics, and you can't look at them and understand them in the same way. I also think the work behind the metrics really matters, like before you're even measuring the outcomes. And I'm going to use just email. We're on a panel sponsored by Workshop. So, well, let's look at email. I think I've learned at Tufts that before I can report on anything with any accuracy, I need to make sure our lists to begin with are accurate, and the data, the work behind the scenes with HR, with our tech side. Um, you can't do analysis. If it's junk in, it's junk out. And so I think people neglect a lot of that a lot of the time and just want to kind of produce the reports and want to see the reports and want to see those numbers. And I spend a lot of time with my team and with our colleagues outside of our team translating kind of here are the gaps in our data, and here's where our limitations exist around data governance and around identity management. And so you need to view these numbers in this context. We have this denominator problem, and to really kind of understand what you're talking about. And I think I thought that might be a unique to higher ed, because our systems have all been built up in these really decentralized ways over many decades with different schools and 5 different points of entry and all of this. But I've learned in talking to my account manager at Workshop that that's a problem across kind of corporate settings, nonprofit settings, everywhere. And so I think understanding the foundation of your data is just as important as having the data or picking the data. Yeah, the silos, someone just popped in, the silos of higher ed are a challenge. It is true. I think that's true probably everywhere. Everybody has their own version of that, but um, we have very decentralized evolution in higher ed that a lot of folks are trying to kind of repair now.
Yeah, I completely understand the ROI conversation, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. And I think that's something that comms has always struggled with. It's a financial calculation. And you buy a new machine, you make the investment, there's ROI on that. I understand that. And I think where we've gotten lost sometimes is trying to validate ourselves using the same formula. And it's tricky and it's complicated. And sometimes we feel like we're making stuff up as we go along. And so there's the ROI conversation, but there's also the COI conversations with the cost of inaction. And I think that's where comms comes in. It's that we're actually bringing action to it. And I was thinking back to early on in my career, I ran internal comms for a manufacturing plant in General Motors. And there are a lot of things, obviously, in big corporations like that that don't do things well. We've seen that in business. There's a lot of things that GM did really well. And one of these was this dashboard mentality where comms was a key part of this executive dashboard. And this wasn't like executive dashboard that was tucked away up on the mahogany row floor. This was out on the manufacturing floor. All this data was shown out there that was showing the impact that not just comms was having, but health and safety was having, and quality was having, and all these other. It was given an equal playing field out there, which all of a sudden stressed the importance of it. It was showing that as comms, we have the same impact that other departments do in the space. So I think by putting it on the same level, demonstrated the importance of it. No one questioned it. And I think often we're looking at as the things we're doing ROI. One of the things that people don't like about me is I do look at the cost of doing things. So for people that run town halls, if you really want to make people mad, calculate how much town halls actually cost the business. Go through and pick an average number of people that attend, an average hourly rate, pretty simple math, figure that out and show like, hey, that town hall cost us $200,000 in time. Was that worth it? All of a sudden, people start looking at ROI a little bit differently because they think an investment is like money spent, not time spent. And so ROI, we're thinking about the financial calculation. It's also that time calculation that comes into play. And I think that's where we can show our true return and impact when we align what we're doing with what the problems the business is trying to solve out
And
there.
Chuck, I think that's also where we can make it easier sometimes to get better, more effective resources in place. So we're actually just putting together a case study right now of a recent communication that went out that highlights our data governance challenges and looking at the number of people who had to be involved over the number of days to create a particular list that we should just be able to push a button and do. How we get people to care about that problem is by speaking into their listening, which is that kind of ROI and COI, at the same time kind of bringing it back to how do we accomplish our goals. But I think the higher question here in terms of impact and how do you demonstrate impact, I think that you also have to be really understanding demonstrating what impact to whom and like defining kind of who you're doing that for and what they're defining impact as is also really important. And so I think you've got to understand if it's your leaders you're trying to demonstrate it to, what's their listening. And so if I'm talking to in a corporate setting, my CFO, in a higher ed setting, my EVP, that's a different conversation than if I'm talking to my head of HR or if I'm talking to my provost office. Those are very different conversations, and the impact and the numbers they want to see and how they want to see it presented and what's going to make sense to them, it's different. And
Mhm.
so I think that's one of those, you have to be a jack of all trades and you have to be a really flexible communicator with your own constituents.
Yeah. I like what you both sort of talked about. There's a level of transparency that comes with this, right? Like you either have to talk about the things that you are doing or elevate the things that are not working or sort of costing us time, energy. In fact, we at workshop we do weekly all hands meetings, and I've started timing myself on how long it takes me to not only prep for that meeting, but then also do all of the comms that comes after it. Certainly that's increased, the speed has decreased, excuse me, as I've just been here longer. I sort of understand the nuance, but that's even something that I think that comms professionals can think about is like, what is it costing you as far as your time goes? How long is it taking you to write an email? How long does it take you to outreach to different departments? Because like you said, Lauren, that sort of decentralization of comms isn't just in higher education. Before I was at workshop, I did work at a university, and that was the biggest thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got the English department and they've got this and this. And the same thing happens at workshop, and we've just hit 100 employees. We have different departments who have different interests and different needs and things to communicate. And it's still the same process that I have to go through of reaching out to those department heads to request and get that information in a consistent way. So one question
Can I add one other point,
oh,
Devin, on
for
this?
it. Yeah,
You talked about, yes, we need to communicate about what we're doing. I think the bigger point is to correlate that to the impact
yeah,
that we're having. So action and then impact and outcome. And this is where I see for all the communicators that are on this, this is my like cheerleader moment for all of you. Take credit for the impact. Take credit. There's the correlation and causation. We get hung up on, well, we talked about health and safety and we did this huge campaign and health and safety improved, but it wasn't just us. Yeah, there were other, yeah, we get all that. But there's an opportunity to take credit, to show the impact that you're having. If you don't, someone else will take credit for that. And this isn't about necessarily boosting your own career, but it is about showing the impact that comms is having. So don't shy away from those conversations, even if you're correlating or causating on those things. Like show the impact, take the credit where it's due, so that you can show that that's where then the ROI calculations start to come in because you can absolutely start to take ownership of things, and then the business will recognize that. They'll see you as one of those trusted resources because you've got a ledger, you've got a track of here's all the things that we have positively impacted in the business.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for saying that. I see some comments coming through in the chat. Very personally, that is something I struggle with a bit. Like I can say, here's the goal, here's how we're doing it. And then like we'll hit the goal and then I'll be like, okay, back to work. And
Right,
it's
Devin,
like, oh,
right. That
like,
that's
let's
that's what we've got to
pause.
stop. That's what we've got to stop.
Yep.
It's not about us, but
Yeah.
it's important for us to show our role in that success or improvement, whatever that metric was that we were trying to help the business do. And I think this is where this is probably now I'm getting off topic here a little bit, but
All right.
I want communicators out there to think of yourself as like big time problem solvers in the business.
Yep.
The more we can use comms to solve problems in the business, you're helping someone else. That could be a problem that a leader is having, that could be a problem the business is having. When you show that comms is impacting that problem, people start to come to you with, hey, how can you help us fix this? How can you help us solve this? Not do this, do that, help us solve that. That is another huge opportunity.
Yeah, I think, and something that you've both said, that Devin said connects, I think, with what you're saying now in terms of you have that window into almost everything, right, that is happening across the organization. And very few people actually have the volume of interaction with as many different parts of the institution as we do. And that piece about problem solving, Chuck, that is 100%, I think, the opportunity that we have and the connecting, right? The connecting the dots is in and of itself a solution sometimes, where you're putting these people in touch with these people because they're both working on the same problem and they need to be aligned. And I think for us, that was very much the framework that we took when we started, kind of launched our department, was meeting individually and in groups with communicators across the institution, with leaders across the institution, with um, audience members across the institution, and really just asking the same basic open-ended questions. What's working, what's not, and what would you do if you could wave a magic wand when it comes to how you find, get, and receive information from this institution? And in doing that, what we were able to do was hone in on really important unsolved problems for the institution and for individuals within it. And then take advantage of that unique position we're in, where we have kind of this window into and these relationships across the institution to say, okay, like how can we move that forward? And then you kind of build each time you have one of those solutions that you're able to get to, and where you're able to understand the various concerns that people have. You can ignore their like everybody wants you to rebrand something and start a new email or a new social media channel for something, right? They're coming to you with their solutions. What's the concern they're trying to solve for? When you're able to start delivering wins in ways that actually lighten people's load, make things work better, build trust, you start to be able to build on that. And so when we were kind of talking about this session a few weeks ago and talking about, well, how do you people always ask, like, how do you become a trusted partner? How do you become a strategic partner? No one's going to just wake up one day. No leader is going to be like, hey, you're invited to the table as a strategic partner. Come on in. You just
Right.
have to be that strategic partner. And check what you just said about problem solving. That's the crux of it. Like, that's how you become the strategic partner, is you solve people's problems.
Yeah, we warned you on this, Devin. Once you get us rolling, like it's going to be hard to stop. So you mentioned something, Lauren, about we do have this tremendous reach and access in an organization, unlike very few other functions inside a business. So take advantage of that. Especially those that are in the internal comm space, you're this connective tissue that is feeding throughout you're seeing things and connecting dots that other people don't see the other dots.
Yeah.
You're seeing the dots. You get a chance to see the whole picture. They only see their portion. And so whether that's solving a problem or creating a new solution out there, that you're seeing that this department has this need or this department has this, and you're able to connect those things out there.
Yeah. While we're talking about departments and really thinking about how, for me at least, I've seen that internal comms very seldom is just one person, right? We're all internal communicators in some capacity because we're all communicating with one another, whether it's more formally or it's indirect. And so I want to talk for a bit about how do we navigate, you could call them stakeholders, you could call them folks who are, doing the approvals, you could call them the departments, whatever they might be within your respective organization. We know that there's a lot of them. Lauren, on this call, you were telling us that I really want you to share that number. I'm sort of trying to lead you into that question. But how many people had to review something for you? I'd love for you to share that with us.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we got ahead of time was, how do you manage it when you have multiple reviewers and they're kind of turning something into something meaningless in the process, or you've got one reviewer reviewing it this way, and then the next person comes in and says, no, it should be the way it originally was, and they didn't even know it was originally that way. It's very exciting. I think I had shared with I shared with y'all earlier that I think my record and higher ed is notorious for kind of everybody needs to weigh in. I think the record I have is it was 64, 65 reviewers for one particular message. And that was very early on in our department's life. And I was told by somebody, oh, this is pretty par for the course. And I was like, no, this is not going to be how we do things. And so a lot of it for us was also really getting clear about what a review means. What is a review and who's reviewing? Who is this a courtesy message to, et cetera? Like really getting clear about, Chuck, you were saying that the racy stuff. I'm not really a big fan of all of that either, but it's a really good example of where it's important to define who is actually responsible. Who do we actually need to have invested? I think also for when I work with people who are more, who are newer to their careers, who are younger, I think it's also really, really important that you go into the writing you do professionally with very little ego or attachment. This is not your creative writing project. I think that is another piece of this. You want it to be effective. And so stay attached to it being effective for sure. But I do think sometimes people also need to look at their own attachment to work product. And I think at the end of the day, if it's doing the job, even if it's not how you would envision it perfectly, that's also another piece to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, I think when you think about the stakeholders, and Lauren, you mentioned this earlier, when someone comes to you and says like, "Hey, I want a newsletter," or "Hey, I need to send an email," or "Hey, I need to do this." I see a lot of narrative on LinkedIn as like, "Oh, I can't believe they're asking me to do another newsletter. I can't believe they're asking." Oh, they don't know. They don't know. So that's actually an opportunity to have a conversation. View that as a positive. They are coming to you looking to have you help them solve a problem that they think that they have. Their mindset is, oh, this is how it should be fixed. No different than how we think if there's an IT problem, we might have an idea how it should be fixed, but really IT knows the right answer. We need to come in with that mindset of we're going to help them solve whatever this problem is. They might come. It's no different than all of us when we go to the doctor and we think we've done our Google medical research and we go in thinking we know what it is. Well, no, there's a trained professional in there. That's their job. That's their job. Our job is to help the business communicate and solve problems in communication. They might think this is the answer, and that's not a negative, but let's get them to the right answer. And I think ultimately that's where we can level up and become that, again, whatever word you want to use, trusted advisor, strategic, whatever, like you're helping them. That's really what they need at that point in time.
Yeah, I get really excited actually. I have colleagues who just want to bury their heads and die whenever somebody is like, I need a rebrand. I'm like, no, this is exciting because it means they want to do something and they have
Yep.
something they want to take care of. And I think for me, this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but for me, kind of this relationship building and problem solving approach, the skill set involved is pretty intentional. And for me, it doesn't come from any comms background. It comes from more my experience as a parent of now two older teenagers, but it's been a journey with them. And I've done some parent coaching and training along the way. And there's this Dr. Ross Green has this collaborative and proactive solutions approach to working with kids. Turns out it's really just an approach to how you have communication with humans and how you address conflict and disagreement in ways that are mutually satisfying. It's not about compromise, right? People are always talking about compromise and I give up something and you give up something. It's about figuring out what somebody actually needs and what their people always go to their competing solutions and they get so stuck on their competing solutions. And it's not about that. It's about what's underneath it. It's about the concerns and addressing them. And your chances are going to have a much better way to address it from a comms lens than somebody who doesn't have a comms background. But in order for them to hear it from you and in order for them to trust you with that, you have to care about what they're saying and you have to understand what they're concerned about. So I think like if you want people to care more about your concerns, you have to care more about theirs. And empathy is going to build credibility and trust, and that credibility is what gets you looped in very early over time.
Yeah, I'm going to brag about a member that we have inside Ecology, and she doesn't know this is going to happen. I don't think she's on, but I'm going to brag about her anyway. Her name is Laura Lampa. Laura is a comms professional. What makes Laura very unique is that she was a former scientist. She just happens to be a scientist who is really good at communicating. What she does because of her training is she views all communication around the scientific theory of experimentation. We're gonna dial this and set and dial this and set and tweak this and then set. And the ultimate with every theory is you're trying to prove yourself wrong. We're thinking comms, we're always trying to prove ourselves right. We're always trying to go to the right solution instead of maybe finding the best solution. And so I think about her all the time when it is you're having these conversations with other people coming to you with their challenges and their needs. It's really a chance to level set with all of them and bring in some new thinking to them, challenge some of their thinking. Like you said, they come in with their ideas as if it's this competition that they have, when ultimately it should become a conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us not to like go into the comp, right? Like that's the key
Exactly.
for us is to stay out of it. It's not to respond with, well, I don't think that's the best way. This is the best. It's not about the best way. It's about, okay, this is what you want to do. And when you go back to people with your proposed solution, if you actually heard their concerns, then you can just describe you're basically in the position of describing your preferred solution
Yeah.
sometimes in a way that just makes sense to them. I have a colleague who is just phenomenal at how he tees up conversations with leaders, stakeholders, partners, audience member, whoever. He is amazing at saying, things like, I just think it's great that so many people will come to us with their solutions and you're coming to us just knowing, like, just like if I needed help with this area that you're focused on and that you're passionate about, I would want to know your thoughts on. I just love that you're coming to us that way. Like he
Hmm.
sets up their listening as well, and that's a page that I'm hoping to take more this year because I just think it's brilliant.
He yeah, this sounds like this colleague, instead of it being more like face to face, he's like standing side by side with them. Like we're gonna go tackle this together instead of we're gonna challenge each other.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that puts the other person right there with them, and they feel praised, they feel right. Just a really great way to start a conversation.
I love that. And that's such a good visual, Chuck, to sort of think about. It's like you're putting the thing in front of both of you versus it's in the
Hmm.
middle, looking to like compete against it. I love that. One of the things I was going to mention too is I know a lot of folks on the call today are teams of one. I am a team of one. And it was a couple of weeks ago here at workshop where we were communicating about something. We use Slack internally within our chat. And I realized that 20% of the company was represented in our all hands channel, meaning that 20% of the company sort of was already going to know what was going to happen at an all hands. And so it is really one of those things where sometimes you can feel like there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of people at the table. But when I was just starting, it was necessary for me to have that level of involvement because they knew the business better than I did. Now we've slowly started to kind of parse down that group. And so I would encourage folks who are on small teams, even teams of one, like if you have a lot of stakeholders, folks who are involved in your process right now, it doesn't mean that you're like doing it wrong or you're not self-sufficient. It might just be sort of that on ramp that you need to really take ownership and then certainly become a partner. So I just wanted to call that out.
Devin, one other
I
Oh,
go ahead,
Go
John.
ahead, Lauren.
Oh, so just one other piece is that so we've got like, kind of the leader stakeholders and then we've got more the partner stakeholders. And I think the other piece for me is how are we equipping our partners? Because we have, we're a team of three and we're situated within university communications and marketing. And then we have people who, some of them have formal communications roles across the institution. Some of them have in some cases, those roles are very mixternal or heavily external, but they still do internal. Some of them are just really exclusively internal. And then we have other people who do that stuff, even though it's not officially their job. And so, how are we equipping all of them so that if you are a team of three or a team of one, how do you create an ecosystem that helps everybody recognize that internal communications is not just sending an email. And one of the first things actually we did when our department launched was to start convening a number of these folks on a monthly basis to give them professional development. Because if you're a team of one, not in a comms unit, you're not getting a lot of communications professional development. And so we wanted to really fuel and foster that. We also wanted to position internal comms as a field and help people understand that, because it was new to the institution and as a formal name. Tufts doesn't have a communications school or a journalism school, so we're always kind of educating on those things as well. And we actually did a book group with Jenny's book about internal communications, which was really eye-opening for a lot of people. They went, oh my God, this is a field. There's research. There's a whole profession. This is a thing. So,
Mhm.
and we've built on that since then. And I think that that's another piece of it, is how do you leverage those partners? How do you make them better? And create yourself as a mentor, friend, partner, thinking strategist, whatever they need in that respect, so that you can have a bigger impact and influence. Very few of us in internal comms are ever going to be doing all the things we need to do with authority because we have authority. That's not how we are creating change. That's not how we're solving problems. We have to do it with influence. And I would argue we're better off. I think when you have authority, you can rest on it, rely on it, and not realize that things are not going as well as you think they are sometimes. When you have to accomplish your goals through influence, you've got people on board. If it's happening, it's because people are on board.
Yeah, I love seeing the teams of one rally around each other inside the chat there. I celebrate teams of one, and here's why: because teams of one are better than teams of none. And for a long time, to your point, Lauren, there was no internal comms role inside businesses. And so absolutely a team of one. In fact, inside ecology, there's people that reminisce about the days of being a team of one. Because in some ways it's a lot
Wow.
simpler when you're a team of one versus a team of many. I have sat on many dysfunctional multi-people teams out there where you kind of wish you were a team of one out there. So it is, you might think like, oh, it'd be great to be a part of a big team. There are some great things about being a part of a big team. There's also great things about owning your own landscape out there and being the one in charge. So yeah, if you're a team of one, you've got a lot on your plate. So does everybody else. So don't minimize your role because you're not a big function yet. The key word there is yeah, because every company started with one person doing this role and then it grew from there.
I love that. Well, we're about at the halfway mark of our time together. So I want to get sort of pivot the conversation a little bit. So here's another question that was submitted ahead of time, and then we will jump to some of these Zoom questions as well. But the question says, is my main stakeholder believes that we should create a culture where people are eager enough to fish for information instead of just giving them everything. I would love to hear what you all's thoughts are on that strategy.
Swim cracked me up for lots of reasons. Uh, and my first thought is I need more information. I feel like, what kind of information do they feel people should fish for? How much fishing? Where are they hoping people will fish? And what benefits does your stakeholder think are available to the organization and the employees when they go fishing? I believe in empowered access rather than information scarcity. But at the same time, and autonomy is good. Friction's not though. So what does this actually mean is part of my question. And people also can't really fish if a pond isn't stocked or easy to locate, which is often the problem with the information that we send our employees fishing for. So I'm kind of hesitant. Like my first impulse was, this is terrible. And then I said, I actually don't know. I don't know if this is terrible. I don't know if your stakeholder has a good idea or a bad one without understanding their thinking more deeply and asking a lot more questions. But even if I thought it was a bad idea, if I needed to talk it through with them or change their mind or help them think differently about it, I don't think I would come at it from a good, bad, right, wrong stance. Again, I'd come at it by trying to just understand what they're trying to achieve. I think I know, but I'm not sure I know. And I find it funny. So whenever I find something funny that someone's saying that they need to do, I know I need to take a step back to understand it better. But I want to understand the stakeholders' concerns, and I think creativity and empathy just go a long way in getting results that are going to be mutually satisfying. So bottom line for me, I think a well-structured intranet, proactive email nudges pointing to self-service resources can be a great way to like invite curiosity and initiative, and that's good. I also just don't think we need to make finding information into a scavenger hunt for people, though.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like this leader doesn't have a good grasp of how stressed out everybody is right now and how much work they're all trying to get done. And sometimes people, I don't like fishing. I haven't gone fishing since I was, I don't know, 13, 14. Some people might love it. But like to Erica's point in the chat, how much is this fishing expedition going to cost? Like that sounds very idealistic, but ultimately that's not realistic. That people just want there's a lot of people out there that just want to come in and do the work and they want to do it well. They, to your point, Lauren, they don't want to go on a scavenger hunt. They don't want to go on a fishing expedition to find these things. Like no one's got that kind of time to do that. So to me, that just sounds like a leader that doesn't get it. I don't
I,
know.
I also think sometimes when I think one tricky thing for leaders that is authentically challenging, and that I think sometimes it's even challenging for us in internal comms. When you actually know more about what's going on and where things are and why they're there, it's really easy to feel like everybody does, and to not understand how much of your kind of automaticity with where something exists or why it's there or what people should know. The number of times someone says, "Oh, well, people should know that." Should they? Like,
Right.
I mean, just because we sent an email 2 years ago once does not mean people should know that. And it's the same as when a stakeholder has a new channel, right? They want a new email digest or a new newsletter, and having conversations about, well, it's a lot of narrative that you are interested in because this is your work, this is what you're producing. Is this something everybody else is equally interested? Does this have any relevance to other people? That's a different question. And so I do think sometimes leaders think it's easier to do things than it is for very real rational reasons, but that again, we need to help them look at differently.
That's something I've talked with some people about recently. I got accused of oversimplifying HR on
Mm.
a, and I'm like, of course I did. Because I don't know that I've never worked in HR. I don't know the inner workings of HR. We all oversimplify finance. We simplify IT. We simplify everything out there because we don't know the details. And so people, of course, will oversimplify what comms does as part of it. That's that's natural. We tend to take offense to it, but that's natural. They're going to oversimplify it. It's our job to explain the complexity of it. It's not their job to automatically understand it.
And if we're going to deep dive into the weeds of something, it better be with the people who also want to deep dive
Mhm.
into the weeds of it. I mean, some of us are really passionate about internal comms and have vacations and birthdays planned around them, and other people don't. So, you
Guilty.
know,
Guilty
right.
as charged.
But that wouldn't be a good birthday party for somebody in another department.
It would be
So
a
that's
horrible birthday party.
right, exactly. And it's the same way with the fishing expeditions. It might be the right thing for some people, but it's not going to be the right thing for others. But you're also not going to change that leader's mind by just coming at it straight ahead, like we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe it's
And then
like, maybe you put your arm around the, you know what, let's go fishing
Go
together.
fishing, exactly. Yes, I was just thinking that.
oh my gosh. All right. Well, let's bounce to this next question. This is the last one we'll do from the pre-submitted questions, and then I'm going to jump over to Zoom for those folks just to be transparent there. So this question says, I feel like I normally don't see things until they're done, and everyone is antsy to get it launched ASAP. How do I advocate for myself to be brought in earlier as a strategic partner? And they said that they also think it's helpful for me to see things before they're ready to go, because then they can usually call out things or mention things that haven't been considered. So what suggestions would you have for that person who really wants to be brought into conversations before it's about to go out?
I don't know, you've got to build those relationships early on. You've got to go to them. If you're not being brought in, you have to go to them and say, "Hey, what are you working on?
Yep.
Where can
Yep.
comms help? What's your next couple of quarters like? What are your priorities for the next 2 quarters, 3 quarters, year, whatever that calendar you work off of? Find out where their priorities are because ultimately that's what they're going to be working toward. Like inject yourself into their workflow.
Yep. My first 3 months on the job, it was nothing but meetings to do exactly that. And also to do kind of those broad three questions that I mentioned earlier about what's working, what's not, and what would you do if you had a magic wand. And we do that every year. We've divvied up all of our partners and we have those conversations. If for some reason we've been less in touch on an ongoing basis and there hasn't been a lot brewing, we're going to go back and say, hey, let's check in about Q1. Let's check in about your fiscal year. What's going on? But I do think there's at the beginning of that process, um, another strategy you can use is as things surface like that, as long as you're pairing it with everything else that we've been talking about. I think as things surface where you're like, oh, wow, if I had seen this at this stage, we could have done this without making that a really big deal, or sounding crabby about it, more just, oh, I'm noticing an opportunity. Next time you have something like this, I would love it if you could loop me in early because here's what I could have done, right? Here's what I can still do. I can still help you with it in these ways. But wow, what an opportunity that would be. Let's get on that next time. And it's excitement. It's not like you did it wrong. This is so cool.
Yeah, I'm going to bring in a baseball analogy. I saw way early on in the chat, I saw someone said from Milwaukee and they put Go Brewers in there. So as an NL Central fan myself with the Cincinnati Reds, I really need the Brewers bats to wake up, whoever's a Brewers fan out there. Brutal first two games. However, I think about this from the standpoint of like we oftentimes feel like we're on the bench and we're waiting to be put in the starting lineup. You have to earn your way into that. And you earn your way into that by showing up on time, being a good clubhouse person, helping other people out, being out there for doing all the things except being on the field at the time when the manager sets the lineup. But you got to be ready at every point in time. And so be that partner, be that teammate all year long so that when that time comes, you get pulled in to the game.
One
Yeah,
of the ways
Valerie, if you're a Brewers fan, brutal first two games. Brutal.
Oh yeah, go Mariners. I see some Seattle folks in there. All right. One of the things I was going to say is at workshop, one of the ways that I stay sort of ahead of the curve, because I think part of being seen as someone who is a strategic partner is not being responsive. And so what Chuck and Lauren said was great, is really thinking about how are you doing a lot of listening? And then how are you preparing yourself to get ready for that specific piece of comms? One of the things that I like to do is when we have, whether it's an all hands, which we at workshop do on a weekly basis, or we do quarterly retreats, where we bring the entire company together and sort of look at like what's ahead. I am diligently taking notes of, okay, this is what this department head is talking about. This is the goal for this team. And then right after that, as soon as we sort of get back into our like normal day, Slack messages are going crazy. I'm saying, how can I help you here? How can I follow up? So I think about the times where there is information dumps within your organization, whether it's actually spoken or even if it's an email from the CEO. Those sort of things are great opportunities to start to get some breadcrumbs on how comms can be a part of that conversation earlier.
Yeah, we've had,
Devin, can I go off script on one thing? I know we're
Yep.
going to the Q&A that people have submitted. Can I answer one that I really want to answer that was submitted earlier?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. So I'm going to look at my other screen here. This is a question submitted. I'm not sure who submitted. They said, how have you successfully kept a senior leader, especially one who's very creative and spontaneous, aligned to a planned cadence without stifling their authenticity?
Mm,
I love this question because this is a chance for comms to get out of the way. Get out of the
mm,
way. If you've got a leader who is creative and spontaneous, lean into that. Strategy be damned at that point. Like that is an opportunity to push into new areas. So I think sometimes as comms, we get in the way of that. We put all this rigorous structure in place when you've got a senior leader who is very spontaneous and creative. That is their true authentic self. Something Jenny Field and I talk about on frequency is be careful of that word authenticity because you
mm.
might be getting your authentic leaders and you just may not like that authenticity. But if this is the authenticity of that leader, spontaneous and creative, absolutely lean into that.
oh, Chuck, people are saying, or someone said in the chat, Avery said that they submitted the question and the issue is that people don't like her comms.
Again, lean into that though.
Yep.
Lean into the spontaneous and creative part. You can nudge it from there. Don't be the blocker. I'd like to know more about the they don't like part too.
Yeah.
Also, I also kind of want to know if creativity is being used euphemistically. Because sometimes I feel like people have ways of describing other things and they're like, well, they're creative or they're
Yeah.
Is this like a
yeah, sure.
Southern bless your heart type thing? Is
Yes,
that?
yeah. So I have both questions going on. I want to know more about the situation.
That's so
Yeah,
funny.
there's somebody Madeline put in here about coaching sessions. Yeah, that's we bring more sports analogies in it. Like coach that. Don't block that. If they are spontaneous and creative, like that could be what they bring to it in the midst of what others bring to the conversation.
I
Sorry.
love that.
Now Devin, I'll let you go back to your schedule here.
I'm,
No, no,
I'm
no.
gonna
Thanks.
I'm gonna be annoying and do the same thing because
No, I
there
was
was
just gonna ask you the same thing, Lauren.
there was a tactical question that that I had seen in what you sent a few days ago, which was being more strategic in company-wide newsletters, which I think is a very hands-on, like we just need to figure this out kind of question that a lot of people have. And it was and the follow-up was how can you drive culture and engagement beyond open and click data? And this was actually one of my other first tasks when I came on board at Tufts was overhauling our employee digest. And so I have a couple of just quick notes on that that I'd love to share. And it's also relevant, I think, for a lot of workshop users. But I think the key for us was really designing, structuring, and writing in ways that maximize readership and engagement. So first of all, it's super helpful now that we have a platform that's actually designed for internal email that supports analytics, prevents unsubscribes, treats internal emails correctly, and that we can now actually use our internal email performance data to inform our structure. So if you're already in that position, that's great. We were sending with Outlook when I started. It was super fun. It makes it easy for people to scan for relevant contact, what's the word I'm looking for? Content. Thank you. Prioritizing brevity and relevance, and making sure that people can link out for depth. You do not need depth in any kind of all people newsletter. It's bad. Depth is bad in those situations. Somewhere along the way, I learned about some communications research that suggests that when people encounter long, unformatted blocks of narrative text, our eye muscles actually react the same way they do when we're sad. And so I often will tell stakeholders, like, stop making people sad with your email. It's not nice. You want to emphasize content that supports readership. And so here we really took on this idea of thinking like a local newspaper. Um, at a time when local newspapers are, we know they're dying off. Dunn, North Carolina has a local newspaper that maintains a circulation rate of over 100% with
Wow.
household saturation in their town. And their guiding principle is names, names, names. If stories in their paper don't mention someone local, they get cut. And so we, shout people out. We include people in the newsletter, and we also make sure there's dessert in there, whether that's meme humor at the close that's consistent with your culture, or for us, it's strategically placing perks that people may not be aware they have as employees, so that there's always a reason to open it and something like what's in it for me. There has to be something in it for you. And then reader generated content has been amazing for us. And we've leaned into that more in the last year. Summer team, we invited people to share photos of their teams and share what they did for sort of summer team building or just excursions or whatever they did over the summer with their team. That was really popular. We got a lot of submissions for that. We've started doing weekly gratitude shout outs. In addition to kind of more formal recognition programs we have, this is just a simple way to say, this person just makes my life easier. And people love that. Their names go in the preview text, whoever we're highlighting that week. So we always know that their pockets are going to expand and be more likely to engage. And we also really try to measure sentiment and not just clicks. So whether that's one question pulse polls, tracking repeat engagement. Oh, I have a teenager walking into my house right now, unexpectedly. Kai, I am on a webinar right now. This is the parenting piece of things. And just looking at secondary effects like event attendance, resource downloads, leader mentions. And I think at the end of the day, people read what they value. So you have to start by asking yourself and everybody around you, like, what email newsletters do you actually want to open routinely? Why? People's answers will always be the same, and it will always come down to interest, relevance, and it's easy to read or scan. And if you can have that conversation with everybody who's like wanting to stretch your newsletter into something really unstrategic, if you can get them to tell you that the only things they open and read are the ones they're interested in, are highly relevant, and are easy, then you're going to go a long way in being able to actually get them to sign off on something that has a lot less content in it and is a lot more just boom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna come back to this leader, our creative and leader out there. Avery, who submitted this, I know Avery. Avery, you and I are gonna have a conversation about this because I got to know the full scoop on this. Anyway, back to you, Devin.
Back to you. All right, so we've got 5 minutes left. I'm looking at the Q&A. So there are a number of questions on AI. Let me actually just, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions out of the 9 about AI. So I want to just hold some space and talk about that because I feel like it's really hot right now. Internal community, everybody's trying to figure out how do we incorporate AI into our workflows. And Lauren, you had said something earlier about names. One of the ways that I very practically use AI is we have a internal podcast at Workshop called Talk Shop. And so I have started taking the transcript of whatever podcast episode that we've just done, run it through, ask ChatGPT to point out who are the people that are talking, who are the people that are mentioned, identifying themes. So that way, as we are doing the internal promotion of that episode, it's not just here's another episode. Now it's here's another episode that features this, mentions this person, can give you information about so on. So there's so many ways to use AI. I just want to talk for a couple of minutes about AI and any thoughts you all have.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. I use AI for 3 reasons. It helps me do things that I can't do, don't want to do, and don't like doing. That's where I lean in. People are like, "Well, I don't want AI to write this or do this." Well, then don't.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. If you enjoy doing that, then please, by all means, keep doing it. But there are a lot of things though that don't add value to the business. Don't or maybe is not in your skill set. I am an Excel idiot. I just know how to use cells in Excel. Because of AI, I can now create formulas in there. So it's actually upskilled me. It makes my work better. I did a presentation where I turned all the panelists into 8-bit video game characters using Google's Nano Banana. I don't have those kind of design skills. I don't need them now. I can use AI to help me create things that I could have never created any other time. I think this is where, as comms people, we viewed it as a threat to us, as if it's going to take things away from us. You don't think accounting is worried about that? You don't think HR is also? Everybody's has a worry about it. Instead, let's focus on what it can help us do. Sort of what we talked about earlier. What more can we do? This will allow us to do more in much more creative ways because it's shedding things that maybe weren't value add before. Or I think about one of my biggest uses of AI for me is using it to create alt text for images. It's something that I was either lazy and wouldn't take the time to do, or what I was writing as alt text wasn't helpful because I didn't really know what to put in there. Guess what? Chatty G is awesome at writing alt text for images. And there's value there in doing it. There was not value in me taking the time to do it, or especially the worst case, me not doing it at all. So I think about those things that it can take off your plate or add to what you're already building. I think that's where comms needs to lean in.
Can't decide if I'm always going to say Chatty G now or never going to
Please
say
do.
Chatty
I
G.
stole it from
It's an
someone
always or
else.
never thing. I have not quite figured it out, to be honest. It's one or the other. I totally agree with all of that. For me, one of those things that I like to use it for things that I actually understand deeply, but that it can speed up for me. And so one of those is actually time chunking and kind of how I plan out my week and my schedule and make sure my FY goals are incorporated even as I'm being responsive. I find generative AI really helpful for that. And for reducing the amount of context switching and role switching I do in my family work life balance. It's super helpful. But I think one of the key pieces for me as I think about that communicator ecosystem and equipping partners across the institution, values, tone, voice. A lot of people are using AI to do a lot of their writing if that's not their strong suit. We already have enough issues in organizations with people, not even knowing there's an editorial style guide versus following it. let alone kind of all of the issues that AI brings to the table with bias and values and all of that. And so I think for me, one of the resources I'm developing this year for our communicator ecosystem is a library of prompts that will help you train your AI on those things. Because I think that's the other thing that a lot of people are interacting with AI is just this sort of like task regurgitate, like it's just do this, look up this. And that's actually not really the power of it. The power of it is that you, especially like the large language model pieces of it, you can really train it to do things the way you need to do them, which to me is just as important as what I'm using it to do. And I think a lot of the conversations right now are the what are you using it to do, and not enough of them are how do we make sure it's doing it the way we want it to do it.
Yeah. Y'all, we are at time. I can't believe how quickly this has flown by. Thank you everyone
Oh,
so
I
much for
I believe it, Devin. This is awesome.
No, this conversation is great. I'm like looking through the chat. We are over time, so I do want to honor everyone's time today. If you have another meeting to jump off to, thank you. We are going to be distributing this via email. Thank you so much, Lauren and Chuck, for truly all of the insights that you've provided with us today. And we look forward to keeping in touch and being in community so we can keep learning from one another. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.